Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is part 2 in a 20-part series I am doing covering the most fan-favorite chapters of Space Marines in order of the Legions. Do you need to have seen the prior part to understand this one? No, but it would make me happy. For those of you new and old, I am covering all of these in order, and if you didn't know, there isn't in fact a second Legion of Space Marines, and in fact, it is an empty gap. So I usually use it as a fill space for Marine chapters that are either unknown or just fun enough and different enough that I can fill them into a spot and people will appreciate it. In the topic of today, we aren't going that far because I'm 99% certain that the chapter we will be discussing today is from Ultramarine stock, but hey, they are pretty unique, so it does counterbalance at some point, right? And who is this chapter? The Rainbow Warriors. See, I'd be repleting my duties if I didn't cover them at some point in a fan favorites list, right? So I might as well throw them in early in the second slot. Before I get into this, I just want to thank my channel members for supporting me and providing me with the means to do this as a job. I love making videos and giving my opinions, and even if I wasn't getting paid for it, I'd still do it, but it is difficult to do full time at the rate that I'm going without the support of you lovelies. So, thank you. And if you want to support this content, or just gain access to additional content, then become a channel member today. It would really help. Me gushing about my fan support aside, let's get into it, right? The Rainbow Warriors are one of the most interesting successors I've ever seen, and this is kind of divided into thirds. So the first third is quite literally because they are one of the first chapters of Space Marines to have ever been shown. Like in the Rogue Trader 1st edition 40k book, before the Legions, before anything that you could consider canon lore, they were there with some of the original members of the fiction, which I think is insane to think about. Alongside that, they were considered one of the most popular chapters for a reason, though that cuts into the second reason why they are as popular as they are, which is the second third, and it's because they are pretty unique in aesthetic. Now, the aesthetic is divided into two halves, but for the canonical one, they are like the only Space Marine chapter to have a rainbow design on their armor, and even though they are clad in kind of a lighter Ultramarines blue, the rainbow stripe on their honk and schnoz is pretty cool. It actually very starkly differentiates them from the rest of their Ultramarine brothers. But alongside that, in I think one account of the War of the Museum book, you find out for some reason their plasma weapons don't just glow a single color like others, so they don't glow blue or green or red. They actually glow in multiple different undulating colors like a rainbow, which is neat, and it's very thematic for them as a legion, as a chapter. But that being said, we don't know much about them. And the last third is that they have kind of been made popular by fan contributions. It's so rare that this kind of thing happens, and it happens well. Because I've seen fan fictions of alternate universes that people like, but none of them have really gotten as popular as the Rainbow Warriors fiction. It very rarely does, and when it does happen, many people are not nearly as rabidly interested as they are in the Rainbow Warriors. And yeah, just the Rainbow Warriors have some of the best fan fiction and fan content in the setting. It has been kind of a one-man mission set out by one dude to make them as cool as humanly possible, and for some reason, he succeeded. Seeing the ideas at hand here and seeing the potential for something greater than just slightly different Ultramarines, the original author who created the fanfiction additions to the Rainbow Warriors, for lack of a better word, was absolutely cooking with this shit, dude. The aesthetic of Aztec Death Warriors that have a rainbow theme, it's super thematic. Each of the companies are themed after the colors of the rainbow, and each of them have a different meaning. So before I get into the specifics and kind of destabilize the formatting of this video, let's organize this a bit. So, what do we know about the canon versions of the Rainbow Warriors, the ones that are specifically GW canon? And what we know is that they are Codex compliant, that is linked with the Ultramarines. They had a planet named Prism because Rainbows and GW in the 80s either cooked too hard with the names or barely had them in the microwave. They were a Codex compliant, like I was saying, and have been brought up once in, I think, the last 20 years in a small segment in an audio drama called Mission Purge, where they just get their name made fun of because lol, rainbows ain't manly. But aside from that, we don't know much other than there was a weird deletion of them from their homeworld of Prism, and that's all. So there are a lot of gaps to fill for the entirety of the lore they have. Thus, some absolute madman filled in the gaps that we needed filled with Aztec-y goodness. Now, I should note, I am a northeastern Canadian, so a lot of cultural significance and a lot of the pronunciation is going to be lost on me. So, I just like the pretty colors and am dumb, so please don't be mean to me if I say anything wrong. So, a lot of these names are gonna go over my head. Nothing to do with Warhammer, but I remember going on a trip to Tennessee a few months back and wanted to order a tres leches flavored ice cream, and I kept pronouncing it with a French accent instead of the correct one, and they didn't know what I was asking for until my friend corrected me. So in short, I'm going to get shit wrong, I'm kind of an idiot, but regardless, let's get into this. So a small bastion of Ultramarines were stationed on a hellish world by the name of... Okay, I cannot be the only one who would have trouble with that. Dude, I don't even... Axi-Che-Manahuac, maybe? I swear, most of 40k fiction is just the authors trying to one-up each other with words they discover or create in terms of difficulty to pronounce. Maybe I'm just ignorant, but whatever. They were stationed on a planet named that, which led to a decent time period of progress and advancement. So I think it's interesting that in the lore, they were considered a hellhole upon landing upon the planet, but eventually the planet became what is classified currently as a paradise world. Very similar to that of the Emperor's Spears, the Rainbow Warriors, once they cross over the proverbial Rainbow Bridge to become a Space Marine, are seen as ghosts and undead, which I think is very interesting. I love the cultural aspect of that, where they don't just see the Space Marines as these godlike figures, they see them as lost spirits and the risen dead that should not be here. The trials to become a Rainbow Warrior are incredibly arduous, particularly violent, and for the life of me, I found a list of the trials somewhere and can't find it anywhere again, except referenced in like 2 videos and 1 Reddit post I found, so I guess the whole ripping out your own heart thing might be canon to the fanon, but I don't know. But suffice to say, from what I was reading, the tests are quite difficult to get into the ranks of the Rainbow Warriors, and the rainbow as a whole is used to represent the colors of the companies from 1 to 8, with 1 being occupied only by dreadnoughts, which is cool as hell because dreadnoughts are just cool, and the armor of these individuals is painted white instead of the traditional blue, representing the combination of all of the colors of the rainbow, meaning they embody the concept of the Rainbow Warriors in its entirety more consistently, which I think is cool. Now, after that, every other company from 2 to 8 gets their own individual company. I won't break it down because the significance isn't so significant that it's worth breaking down. Now, the companies of the 9th and 10th are a little weird. The 10th company, as it is the Scout company since they are Codex compliant, have not earned a color yet, so they are, of course, gray. But the 9th company, the Black Company, is basically the in-house World Eaters division because they are literally a dedicated war crimes company. They are often sent on missions to accomplish the dirty jobs that the Inquisition needs doing that usually involves a shitload of civilian casualties. They tend to wear pelts and are actually responsible in lore for a small civil war between the Inquisition and the Rainbow Warriors, as their methods were perceived by the Ordo Hereticus to be the work of the Blood God, which, if you read the things that I was reading, makes sense. So they sent the Sisters of Battle to attack the chapter instead of attacking the 9th Company, which, I get it. Space Marines are Space Marines. When you see the big man in power armor, you don't check to see if they have a black stripe. Though I do like this inclusion, as it's a reference to a single drawing in the original Rogue Trader book. This piece of art here is one of the only canon pieces of Rainbow Warriors art that we have. It's actually a Rainbow Warrior getting goddamn kablamboed by a Sister of Battle for whatever reason, and no, it's never expanded upon in the lore for obvious reasons. Obvious reasons being it's Rogue Trader. This game is a bunch of wacky malarkey that is never going to be considered canon. The fandom behind the Rainbow Warriors is one of the more encouraging aspects of the 40k fandom as a whole. I find they are beyond an interesting faction, not so much because of how they interact with the fandom, but because of how the fandom's ideas rewrite the history of what the chapter represents. It is a bit too expansive, and I can see how it would grade against the designed canon and theming of 40k, but that's kind of the point of fan chapters and whatnot. See, there is a reason why we have 1,000 Space Marine chapters, and that's because we will never know every single one of them. They are all numbered, but we only know like maybe 200, 300 at the most, and the rest are there so you can make your own. So why not take a pre-existing chapter and expand upon it as much as you can to give it the backstory that it deserves, especially if GW doesn't want to expand upon it in general. Some authors in the Black Library tend to do that as well, where they will take a chapter that doesn't have a lot of lore and add things onto them just so that they can get more lore. I know that Aaron Dembski-Bowden famously rewrote some of the Shadow Wolves lore to be more like the Luna Wolves because his significant other liked the Luna Wolves and hated how they turned into the Black Legion at the end of the day, so they wanted to have something for them. So I thought that was very interesting. It's kind of nice to see people taking the initiative of what GW put down in order to do what they do, which just makes some fun stories for their funny guys. Putting little hats on your little Marines on the tabletop has always been one of my favorite aspects. I'm absolutely dog shit at kit bashing, but I always have a sort of deep-seated appreciation for people who take that little extra mile of like, oh, this is my specific company of Space Marines. I'm painting them with this shoulder pad because the chapter doesn't have that color, but whatever. I always have that kind of appreciation for that, and the Rainbow Warriors kind of exemplify that exact concept. What do you think about the Rainbow Warriors, both canon and not? I love the paint scheme, I love the aesthetic, and I really like the expansion that the fans have done. It adds a lot. Also, I forgot this, but I would be remiss to not mention that they have the Power McQueedle, which is kinda awesome, because McQueedle are awesome. They are literally just hand-cranked, obsidian-tipped war chainsaws, which is dope as all hell. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about these noble sons of Guilliman. Also, remember to like and subscribe, as it helps the channel immensely. Thanks again for watching. And before anyone asks in the comments, no, I have not gotten my Rogue Trader book yet. I ordered it 165 days ago, and I'm only finding out now that the reason why I don't have it is because I ordered a Watch Captain Artemis alongside it for a friend, and they haven't produced that model yet. I am going to start throwing plates soon.